Hi friends, my name is May Stone. I'm a flutist at Juilliard and today I am here to talk to you about practicing. Life as a musician in New York is really incredible. I feel so privileged to be able to be in such a big city where there's art everywhere you go. I mean, coming from a small town in Oklahoma, it's kind of a shock to know that there's more than one orchestra, and there's just so much to do and there's so much inspiration coming everywhere. And being surrounded by so much art really motivates me to practice. But once you're in the practice room, things get a little harder. As musicians and as artists in general, we have to be really self-disciplined, and that means really making sure that you're doing productive practice at all times. For all those hours that we spend alone in a practice room, we have to be our own teachers and we have to be our own best selves. So what do you do when something really hard comes up and you can't figure out a solution? How to practice a particularly challenging section. You know that one part of your concerto that you're working on that you just cannot get right to save your life? I've been there a lot. I'm usually there. Nothing beats the rush of being able to perform something super well. But when you're struggling to even get something up to tempo, it can get really frustrating. I know the last thing I want to do is slow down, but really, that's the most important thing. When I get stuck, the first thing I do is slow completely down, really assess what the problem is. Maybe it's a really hard transition between notes. Maybe it's just that I haven't really properly learned this section. So it's really crucial to go note by note and really figure out what the problem is. If all else fails, it really helps just to step back and give yourself a little break. Try to just calmly assess what's going on. I always find that taking a short break, walking around, getting a drink of water, just giving your brain a little bit of time to cool off really refreshes me and helps me get back to what I'm doing with a better intent. If you really find yourself in a rut, and I mean for days or weeks even, take some time to figure out what it is that might be preventing you from being productive. Is it that you're practicing at the wrong time of day? Is it that you're not really working on something you truly love? Sometimes I find that I'm working on a piece and I'm just freaking out because I feel like I have to have it ready and I have to have it perfect, but maybe I don't really like that piece, or maybe there's something else missing that I'm not quite getting. It's really easy to make art into more of a mechanical thing rather than an expressive thing. So when I start feeling like I'm losing sight of what my goals are for the piece, then it's really hard to get back on track. Some ways I'm able to stay motivated are by keeping track of my goals. Sometimes it helps me to make a list of everything I want to achieve by a certain period of time, whether that's like over the course of a year, or if that's my graduation goals or my ultimate career goals. For a lot of people, competitions and performances are a really great way to stay motivated. So how do you practice when you're preparing for a performance or a competition? First of all, in a competition when you're performing against a lot of other people, it's very important to be really solid in your technique and have a good mastery of the piece. That's easier said than done, obviously. It really shows when you've worked really hard on a piece. For me, it really helps to listen to a lot of recordings and gain inspiration from other artists before me. I find that playing for other people is really beneficial because you get their ideas and their feedback, and you can gain a lot of perspectives that you wouldn't have originally thought of. I think the most important thing is just genuine authenticity. If it seems like you're copying the ideas of somebody else without really putting your own personal spin to it, it shows. Nothing is more refreshing than watching a performer in their element, playing their musical ideas straight from the heart. Sometimes I get scared, like, is this what they want to hear? Am I playing this the style that they want to hear it in? And then a lot of the time I feel that I'm scared to take risks because I don't want it to be too much, or I don't want people to disagree with how I'm playing. You're never going to please everybody, but there are a lot of people who are going to like your own genuine interpretation. So don't be afraid to approach that confidently. If you're confident in yourself, others will be confident in you too. Now, all that was really abstract, but when you're actually preparing for the competition, how are you going to go about doing that? When you're just starting out learning a piece, it really helps to just break everything into sections rather than just approaching the piece as a whole and freaking out. It helps to approach things in small chunks. So either doing a movement of a piece, or half the movement, or 3 measures for an entire month. No, don't. But breaking it up into smaller chunks makes it a lot more manageable, and it really helps you get into the fine details of the piece and figure out exactly what you want out of every note. How do you know when you've practiced enough? I'm sure a lot of you have been asked, how many hours a day do you practice? Or how long have you been working on this piece? While it's impressive to spew out a really big number, it's important to remember that the quality of your practice really is more important than the quantity of it. Sometimes I can spend an entire year working on a piece, and sometimes I only have time to work on it for 2 or 3 weeks. And what really matters in the end is how productive your practice was. It's easy to say you spent 4 hours in the practice room today, but if half of that was spent on your phone or just working on on a passage really mindlessly, how much did you really get out of that practice session? If you're pressed for time and you only have 20 minutes to practice, how are you going to fit a really productive practice session into that time? It all comes down to being really mindful of what you're doing. If you have trouble keeping track of what you need to be working on, sometimes it helps to have a practice journal that says, today I need to work on measures 45 through 100 of this piece. If you have a private teacher, it helps to talk through practice strategies with them, but in the end it's really about all of the self-discipline that you have. As artists, I don't think we are ever fully happy with our work, but you'll know when you've practiced enough, when you're really satisfied with the work you've done on your piece, and you feel that you're comfortable expressing your ideas to the audience. A few other things to keep in mind about practice. Do your scales and your etudes. I know they're not fun, they take a lot of time, they're really tiring, but it's really like eating your vegetables. I mean, you have to do it, otherwise you're going to have a pretty miserable time. It helps with your technique. It's going to make approaching those really hard passages a lot more manageable. Know your limits, know what works best for you. If the way you work involves just staying in a practice room for hours with no break, and that works for you, go for it. If you find that practicing maybe 30 minutes at a time and taking a 15-minute break helps you better, then you should do that as well. If you find that your most productive practice sessions are really early in the morning or really late at night, as long as you're not waking anybody up, you should absolutely go for it. Find out what routine is the most productive for you and follow that. I find that practicing in my room isn't always the best thing because I like to distinguish my workspace from my relaxing space. But for other people, they feel the most comfortable practicing in their rooms. Really be mindful of what works best for you and follow that. So this was a fun talk about practicing. Now I'm gonna go practice. Best of luck in all that you're doing. Remember that practicing shouldn't be a chore. Like athletes and like all artists, it's really important for us to be honing our skills and really being aware of ourselves and how we work best. So with all that in mind, go forth, go practice, good luck. Thanks for listening to me today. See you soon. Bye.